Hi, good morning. Today is June 6, 2025. My name is Rinaldo Aguiar, and I'm in Katy, Texas 77494. So this video is a very, very short video. It's part of the Rapid Fire Tips for Law Enforcement series that I'm working on. And this is a very, very short video. Today I want to talk in this video about a group of acquaintances that I call the Conoco-Phillips crew. Okay, so this is a team of agents that they were kind of the first people that I interacted with when I moved to when I bought this house. So this the 26714 Valley Side Drive, Katy, Texas house on 2000 at the end of 2014. Okay. And the way after going through all this process of years of learning about how they operate, I understand that what they do is to set up situations that are pre-designed. Like, they didn't invent any of this for me. Like, they've been doing this for years to many other people, right? It's like pre-packaged scenarios. Okay. And this scenario is basically, if I can describe it in a way, it's kind of a pre-packaged group of friends that come into your life, and all of them are agents. You don't know it, but all of them are, and they're inserted as an ensemble into your life, and from that point on, right, they do different things as a group together without you knowing that they're acting in concert, right? And that's how the whole thing works. And like, looking back in retrospective, I've encountered these kind of groups before this point in 2014. So this was probably like the third or the fourth iteration that I encountered of this prepackaged solution, right? Anyhow, so I wanted to give some visibility into this group because they're here in Katy. Some of them are and that's the other thing, right, that I've noticed, that when certain individuals in this mini cluster of friends that they deploy in your life are successful, the reward seems to be always pretty much the same, right? It's a combination of, well, of course, crypto payments, right, and travel. Like, they all seem to, like, then stop working. Like, they retire at a very early age. Like, I've seen like late 40s, mid 40s, late 40s, early 50s. People that could have worked for another good 10-15 years, but they stop working, of course, because they don't need to work anymore. They were successful in their task and they got paid very well, and then they don't need to work anymore. And then they dedicate their life to traveling, right? And then you see on their Facebooks, these posts that they're in Belize, or that they're in Italy, or that they're in New Zealand, canoeing, like exotic, so you see their Facebook pictures, and and it's like you say, well, this person, is not working. They didn't really work their entire life. The job they had wasn't like a super high paying job. It was like an average job. How are they affording all this travel, right, to all these exotic places? That's one pattern. And the other pattern seems to have to do with their sons and daughters. Okay, so the other form of payment that I suspect that I've seen, and I'm pretty sure it's a form of payment, has to do with their sons and daughters, or daughters, being accepted to prestigious universities in the US, sometimes abroad, like in the UK. And these universities have very expensive tuitions, and I suspect that it's all taken care of by the network, right? Like, so you I've seen examples in which, for example, a household, that you look at the house, you look at what the husband and the wife do, and you can estimate, right, that they could be making maybe $80,000 a year as a household, right, between the two of them, maybe $90,000 a year. And then the daughter goes and says that she's going to study in London, UK, and then she's going to go to, or that she's going to go to Cambridge University, right? Like, it doesn't add up. Like, it's not possible for these two people to afford, not even the living expenses in London for the child. How are they going to afford the tuition and all the other expenses, right? That's the answer. It's the network, right? It's payment for, and I don't know exactly the mechanism because I had, if it happened to me today, I would be more inquisitive. But at that point, I didn't have any interest in learning more about how exactly the tuition was being paid, so I didn't really inquire, right? But I imagine it would be like I imagine, right? Like it has to be something that is explainable, right? Because otherwise, in and out, it could all unravel. So it has to be something like like a scholarship or something, right? And this network is very powerful. They have agents everywhere, including the universities. So it's not a difficult feat to give a scholarship to anybody they want to give the scholarship to, right? That's the other part. The other part I've seen is the other form of payment I've seen in groups like this is through the payment of medical bills of the parents, right? So, for example, Patricia Rojas, her mother had a very aggressive type of cancer. That I have to say, like I also seen this. Many of these agents, I've seen this thing that seems like a recurrent thing where the parents get cancer, right? I understand cancer is a very aggressive thing, and it pops up, and then. But I have to be honest, it crossed my mind that it's possible that, because, like the Venezuelan informant told me that they inserted microplastics in my food, and he warned me about that, right? He or she, right? I'm not revealing the gender, but it occurred to me, right, that in the same way that they give cancer to their targets using microplastics, it is possible that they also give cancer to the parents of the agents, right? To create a situation in which the agents desperately need to succeed, right? To motivate them in a way, right? So if your parents, God forbid, gets cancer, right? Your father or your mother God forbid, get cancer, and the network, comes and tells you, well, if you kill this guy or if you help us kill this guy, we'll pay for the full treatment of your mother for cancer. And this is a very high-end treatment. It costs $3 million, right? And the chances of survival is, I don't know, 55-60%. Would you do it, right? So I think it could be a tool. What I'm saying is, I think the cancer, besides being a weapon, it could also be a motivational tool for the network. But this, of course, is a theory. I don't have any proof of this. What I have is observations of multiple agents that have, gone the extra mile, for sure. And all of them, their parents, like either the father or the mother, got aggressive cancer and got treated with expensive treatments in the U.S. That these agents had no means to afford, right? An example of this is Patricia Rojas. So Patricia Rojas, at the time, she wasn't working, like she was just staying at home. And Francisco Castillo, who was her husband, at the time was driving Uber. Now, I understand that Francisco is an agent and is probably a millionaire, right? I understand that. But at the time, right, that's what was presented to me, that he was an Uber driver, right, making, I don't know, $1,500 a month on Uber. Patricia's mother got cancer, right, and she was transported by Citgo. Citgo is this company tied to PDVSA, the PDVSA, the Venezuelan oil company, Venezuela state-controlled oil company. So Citgo paid for Alcy Sanchez, who was Patricia's mother, transportation from Venezuela to Houston, to Katy, Texas specifically. And I got this information directly from Francisco and Patricia, right? I'm not guessing this, like they told me this. And so Citgo paid all the expenses, transportation, lodging, the treatment itself in one of the most expensive facilities, healthcare facilities in Houston. And this treatment lasted months. Like it was something that they could definitely not afford, right? Like, so just by looking at the amount of and the length of the treatment, this is something that was in the millions of dollars, most likely, right? And making $1,500 a month, Francisco, in Uber, right? It's not possible. the way they spin it to me at that time, because I was kind of curious about how they were paying for all that. Patricia said that her mother got admitted into an experimental program in which they were like trialing an experimental treatment that was not available to anybody, and because she was willing to try it because there was no other option, it was given for free, right, by the facility. But I doubt that that's really what happened, right? So I'm mentioning this because it could be a valuable tip if authorities ever investigate this situation. So anyhow, those are the forms of payments for these clusters of friends, for the ones that are successful, right? And the other are businesses, right? So they set up like businesses that, what I see in common on those businesses is that they require a low level of ongoing effort, and they yield like sustainable income over time. Like for example, one of the people in the Conoco-Phillips crew, after he retired from Conoco-Phillips at the age of like 48 or something like that, he bought a franchise of one of those soccer clubs. I don't know exactly which one. I'm sorry, I don't follow soccer, but one of those soccer clubs in Italy, right? A famous soccer club. I don't know which one. So this franchise is basically allows him to like run like soccer camps for kids with the branding of this franchise, and he runs them in Houston. I mean, he doesn't run them, like he hires instructors and such. And those soccer camps are very expensive, right? So I think that's a form of payment as well, right? Like he doesn't really have to work; he just have to sit and collect the money, and he has the franchise, and and all those things are things that are explainable by the level of access this network has, right? Like the access to franchises of soccer clubs in Italian soccer clubs it's not something the average American has access to, right? So anyhow, today I want to talk about the Conoco-Phillips crew, and I have a picture of them. It's here. So this is Johnny. I'm sorry, I don't have his last name. He lives here in Katy. I mean, I have him in the pipeline, but I don't have it with me. I don't remember exactly the last name. And I will have to go to the other home, but this imagine it's trivial to find. Like all of them are friends with Gloria. That's how they were introduced to me, to my life. I mean, so this is Johnny. He's Italian descent. That's the guy that retired from Conoco-Phillips. All of them, from Johnny to Angel, who is the last one on the right. All of them used to work for Conoco-Phillips. In some capacity, and yeah, I'm trying to remember the name. I'll have to look it up in the pipeline. But anyhow, like to make this story short, all of their houses are marked in the geo index of Elon Musk, all of them. So Johnny retired from Conoco-Phillips and started that thing with soccer for kids with the Italian franchise. Saile, who's Johnny's wife. She also worked for Conoco-Phillips, something related to IT, like a project manager or something like that. She also retired, and now they're traveling the world, and also after she retired, she set up this fitness studio, which was a huge facility. It was very big. I mean, for the salaries that they could have been drawing at Conoco-Phillips, it was unexplainable, right? How they got that. But it was located on FM 1093. No, FM 1463 in Katy, Texas, like a mile away from my home. And the studio, it was a fitness studio. It was called Z, as the first letter of her name, Saile, with Z. It was called Z Zone. But apparently it didn't do well, and then they closed it. I don't know. And then there's I don't know. Well, we pronounce in Spanish his name as Helio with H, but I guess if you said in English, it would be like Helio. Also part of that crew, also marked in the index. This lady, I don't have her in the pipeline. I don't have her name, but I know that she's a player because she has intercepted me. I mean, the facial recognition, picked her up as intercepting me multiple times while I was running, and one time in the corner of my street, And I saw her and I recognized her. And when she saw that I recognized her, she pulled into one of the houses in that street. I'm going to tell you exactly which house she pulled into. This must have been like 2 years ago. Right. So I was coming back from a run. Right. This is my house, and I was walking on this side of the street, and she intercepted me in this corner. Right. But when I fixed my eyesight on her, and she realized that I recognized her, and then what she did is that she turned right and she pulled into this house over here, or in this house, one of these two houses, which are also marked in Elon Musk GeoIndex, right? So I'm pretty sure she's part of the crew. And now we get to Maria Alejandra. Okay, Maria Alejandra is this lady here next to Angel, or Angel in Spanish. And Maria Alejandra is an interesting character. Many things, right? So I'm just going to recount a few things. Her house is, of course, marked in the index. They were promoted in the organization, in the criminal organization, maybe like 4 or 5 years ago. And I have signals that tell me that they were promoted. I'm not going to say which are the signals because I'm not in the business of giving the organization any information. But I will give that to the FBI. So they got promoted. An angel started working in Louisiana, which is a well-known, network hub for the organization. Anyhow, Maria Alejandra. So every time, the online conflict with WebMD and Liana Technologies escalated, right? And they tried to, after I became aware of the industrial espionage, of course, the first thing I did was to close all the doors in my house, metaphorically, right? Like I closed any avenue that they could use to insert things or insert people into my house. I stopped bringing my friends to my house. I stopped playing cards with my friends in my house, things like that. And when that happened and the conflict got, escalated, always Maria Alejandra appeared, like always. Like she would appear randomly in the corner, right? Like she was like walking or and then Gloria would invite her into her home. And because, I've known Maria Alejandra since 2014, and at the time I wasn't aware, I didn't have the GeoIndex, right? So I had no way to know. I trusted that Maria Alejandra was not part of it, right? And I accepted Maria Alejandra coming into the house. So she did this like 3 or 4 times in the last 4 years, where she would appear from nowhere, right, in the worst possible moment for the criminal organization. So that also tells me that it confirms me, because now that I have the GeoIndex, I can see, and you can see it here, that her house is marked in the index with a precision of 23 meters, right? So the point, the biggest cluster of points in her house, marked in the GeoIndex of Diosdado Cabello, is within 23 meters of the center, of the geometric center of the house, right? I mean, this is undeniable. Like, this is not... this is undeniable, right? And you can see the output from a spyhell here. So that would be the house of both Maria Alejandra and Angel, okay, their wife and husband. Now, I have to say, Maria Alejandra, right? She's a chemical engineer. She went to the same university as me. I don't know if that's true. It could be kind of the familiar names pattern, right? Like telling you, oh, I went to the same university as you. It could be that, right? When we met in 2014 and they told me that they had gone to the same university as me, both Angel and Maria Alejandra, I got very excited because, I've never encountered anybody from my university here except Francisco Godoy, which, at this point I don't know if it's even true. But, that aside, I started like asking questions, right, about, when they went to the university and the professors that they met, and it turns out none of the professors that I encountered during my tenure in the university, they encountered, right? So I don't know if it was true or not. But supposedly they went to the same university. Now, the reason I'm saying all that about the university is because, interestingly, Maria Alejandra got a job at the Katy ISD, which is the education department, right? Like it's the organization that runs all the primary elementary schools in Katy, Texas, with this huge operational hub of the organization. And it's been discussed in the journal before, in the counterintelligence journal, that almost all of these Katy ISD schools are used as buffer zones to protect the houses of prominent network agents against radio frequency eavesdropping by the authorities, right? And the schools themselves are marked with high paramilitary scores. And the schools actively collaborate. Like there was an instance in which last year, no, 2 years ago, I was running consistently in one of the schools, which happens to be the school that is next to the complex where Marcelo is being, I would say, held at this point, right? Right next to that school, I was running, right? So, at that point, I had the Cold Mobile in the early versions of the system, the cameras and all that. And I remember, so this was last year, sorry, not 2 years ago, this was last year. So I remember that I concerned for leaving the car unattended. I always parked it right underneath the security cameras of the parking lot of the school, right? After I did that for like 2 weeks, the school removed all the security cameras from the parking lot. And I don't see that as a coincidence, right? I think the person that is in charge of the security cameras is an agent, right? And because they saw that I was making efforts to get recorded by those cameras in case something happened, right? I could go to the police or to the FBI and point at those cameras, right? So they removed the cameras. So that's just another indication. And the school is marked in the geo index and all that, right? So it's just an anecdotal observation, but it's confirmed by hard data that came from the database that I captured from the hands of Elon Musk, thanks to the harassment of Diosdado Cabello and Vladimir Padrino Lopez. So that's that. So she works in the KDSD as a teacher while she had no training in Venezuela or anywhere that I know for being a teacher, right? She's a chemical engineer. And I saw a similar pattern with a friend of Penelope Suarez, whose name is Andreina. She's a veterinarian, but now here in Houston, she lives in College Station, from what I know. And I met him in person. But here she's a teacher, right? I guess what I'm saying is that could be another form of payment, right? Like a job in the KDSD for the agents. Anyhow, so that's Maria Alejandra. She always appears at the right time, right? When the thing is very very tight for the criminal organization, then they deployed her. Now, interestingly, last week when I started going out again, because I was basically a prisoner in my house until last week, right? When I started to make some changes. So when I started going out, I went to HEB. I think it was on the last week of May. Okay. I was in HEB maybe. The same dynamic as with Micro Center. They didn't know where I was going, right? So they were very desperate following me. They couldn't figure out where I was going. Anyhow, at the end, I went to the HEB that is here on the corner of Cinco Ranch Boulevard and FM 1463. That's when I took the picture of that agent next to the gray SUV holding a kid that had the glasses, right? The sunglasses. So that day, I was at the HEB very short time, maybe 12 minutes, 15 minutes maybe, right? As I'm coming out, the first person I encounter is Maria Alejandra, right? I haven't seen Maria Alejandra probably in 3 years, right? What are the chances of that? It could be a coincidence, right? Could be a coincidence. I mean, she lives nearby, maybe she was going, but knowing the situation, knowing how desperate the network is, knowing all the data and information that I have, knowing that she's an agent, knowing that her house is in the index, and that knowing that she always appears when the network is this desperate, and I encountered her that day, right? And then she hugged me, and she was holding her phone, and while she hugged me, she put her phone in my chest, right? I don't know, right? It could be a way to scan something. I don't know. Or it could be a way to intimidate me, right? A way of telling me, we can get close to you whenever we want. We have all the people here. We can do, whatever we want when we want. Because I've been taking steps to avoid, people getting close to me while I was, going to the supermarket, right? To the grocery store. and then she comes and hugs me and puts her phone in my chest. So I don't know. I don't know exactly what was the intention of doing that, but it seemed deliberate, right? It seemed planned. It seemed like there was a plan to do that. So that's Maria Alejandra, and then Angel in Spanish, or Angel. Angel Vargas da Costa, as I mentioned, like his house is marked in the index. He was promoted in the network maybe 4 years ago. And one of the first people that I met, and we were friends. I mean, not very good friends, because I didn't really click with any of them. I think because of the age gap, right? And as I said, like these are iterations that they do of the same idea, right? So what happened? I mean, if you look at them, right? Like this is Gloria back in 2014. She doesn't look this way today, but this is her, and you can see Gloria was in her mid-30s, right? And these people were in the mid-40s, right? Early 50s. So there was an age gap of 10 years or more between us, and I didn't really click with them. So I think what happened, I mean, and this is just a theory, right? I have no way to prove this, but I think what happened is that one day around 2016, I was talking with my brother, right, on the phone, and he asked me, how are you, like regular brother stuff, like how you feeling, are you happy, And I said, well, I'm bored out of my mind here in Katy. That's what I said, I remember. And I think that's where everything changed, right? Like, then these people disappeared from my life, and then they brought the new cluster, right? That's when Penelope Suarez appeared. That's when Francisco Castillo appeared, Patricia Rojas. And if you see, like, all these people, I mean, the new iteration of the cluster, it was more refined, like, it was more contextual to me, like, closer to my age group, closer to my interest. Penelope now is a runner. Francisco Castillo, he's a driver, and I needed a driver to go to the airport every 2 days a week, two times a week. Patricia, I've known her for 30 years, since we were back in Venezuela. So it was a cluster that was more bespoke to my I would say preferences, right, or my situation. So that cluster worked better for sure, right? It got, they got very well embedded into my life, unlike this previous cluster. So that's what they did. They removed this cluster and they brought in the new version, right? The new iteration. It's kind of what I was describing in the earlier video today. That's what we engineers do. We create an idea, we test it, right? If it kind of works, we make it better. If it doesn't work at all, then we discard it and we try something completely different. But if it kind of works, you improve on it, right? And you keep improving. Eventually, you get to a version that is perfect. And I think that's exactly what they did. So anyhow, this is the Conoco-Phillips crew. All of their houses are marked in the geo index, and tons of signals in that group. Well, thank you so much for your time, and looking forward to the next one.